So in today's video, I'm going to show you an easy way to paint watercolor pears in Procreate. After that, I'll show you how to make them more colorful and also how to add a cute face if you want. As usual, I'll list the brushes I'm using for this in the description below. And as you can see, I've already got a sketch and a color palette placed in here, and you can download these for free in the description. I've just placed them in here as the very top layers, and then I set them both to multiply. And then to start painting, I'm going to select a blank layer down here, and we're going to start by giving this an overall background wash. So for the color, I'll use this yellowy green tone, so I'll do a long press to grab it. For the brush, I'm going to use the smooth dry round, and I'm going to try to fill out this wash in one continuous stroke. And this is pretty close to the sketch, and it may be good enough, but if you want to make it more perfect, you can use the liquify tool set to push, and you can actually just kind of push everything you painted back in line with the sketch. After that, I want to add a little bit of texture and shading, so I'll make a blank layer above my background. For the brush, I'll use the water stain brush, and I'll continue with the same color. I just want to make sure the layer I'm working on here is blank, and then it's set to multiply. And then I'm going to use this brush in a little bit of an unusual way, so I'm not starting with a light pressure and then increasing it, because I don't want it to have tapers. I'm actually just going right in with a lot of pressure, and then creating these kind of bars. And these are kind of random, but I'm sort of focusing them in the shadow areas. And then once I'm happy with those, I'll merge that layer together with the background layer, and then we can add the highlight. So I'm going to change my brush to the medium quill, and I'll choose a very light version of this yellowy tone, and I'll just scribble that on in here. And then at this point, we can finally do some blending to smooth this out. So first, I'll turn off the sketch, and I'll make sure everything is together onto one layer here. And then I'll switch my brush to the background water blender, and I'm going to blend sort of in two different ways. The first way is just very, very lightly, and I'll just soften up some of these overlapping edges, but I want to make sure I leave some behind. I'm also going to kind of bring this around the highlight as well. And then the second way I'm going to blend is actually kind of moving colors around. So for example, this highlight here, if I just tap on it and hold down with a lot of pressure, I can actually kind of drag it, and it drags it in sort of an unusual way that creates some interesting edges. So I'm going to do that in a few areas as well. I'm also going to use this to sort of shape the highlight. And there we go. I think this looks really good. We've got a clear shape and a clear shading going on here, but I want to enhance it a little bit. And I think the best way to do that is with the freehand selection tool. So I'll grab that. And first I'll start with the shadows. I'll feather this out quite a bit, maybe around 20%. And I'm going to darken it by going to the curves adjustment and making sure it's set to gamma. And I'll just take this blue node and drag it towards the right. There we go. Then I'll do it again, but kind of in a smaller area. And I'm also going to feather it out less this time. And then also, I think I'll do another shadow just on this side, just to make it pop out a little bit more. And then I can move on and do the highlights. Just pretty simple. I'll just select that area. I'll feather it out around 10%. And this time with the curves adjustment here, instead of dragging it to the right, I'm going to drag it up. Next, I'll move on and add some speckles. So I'll make a blank layer above the pear, and I'll set this one to multiply as well. For the color, I'm going to grab the middle color, and I'll use the speckles brush here at the top. And I'll pretty much do this everywhere, but I'm going to avoid the highlight as much as I can. After that, I'll lower the opacity, just so these speckles are barely visible. Then I'll make another layer, also set to multiply, and I'll do another pass of speckles, but at a little bit of a smaller size and also in more limited areas. And you could leave this second set of speckles as it is, but I want to lighten it because it does feel a little bit too dark. And then once you're happy with how the speckles look, I recommend merging both of those layers together onto one, and then you can clean up the edges with the eraser brush. After that, we can move on and start adding some details. So I'll make a blank layer, but I'm going to put it below the speckles but above the pear. For the color, I'm going to continue with the middle one here, this kind of burgundy tone, and I'll use the fine liner pen brush. And I'm going to start by adding a little circle down here. And then I'll change my color to the last one. And I'll add a little circle up here, just a little distance away from the top of the pear. After that, I'll grab a water blender. I think I'll use the fluffy one. And for the top here, there's a little bit of a trick. I'm just going to kind of soften it and push it down. I want to create sort of like a crescent shape that's faded on the top. And then for the bottom one here, I'm just going to soften the edges. And you could leave it just like that. I think that looks fine. But I want to show you a trick for this that I haven't used in a long time. So I want this to look like it's sort of like a dark watercolor that's just dropped on there and then it's spread out naturally. So to get that effect, you can go to Liquify, but this time set it to crystals. You can copy my settings here, and I'll just scribble it around like this. And obviously this effect made it too large, so I'm just going to scale it down, first by using the freehand selection tool to isolate it, then I can use the arrow tool to shrink it. And with these details finished, I want to move on and add the stem, and this will be on its own layer as well, and I'll use the last color here. For the brush, I'll continue with the fine liner pen, and I'll make the stem a little bit oversized because we can shrink it later on. I'm basically just going to make a shape kind of like this. And then if you want, you can add some shading. So I'll do that with the freehand selection tool, and I'll start by adding a shadow like this. And then I'll do the opposite on the other side, but I'll brighten it this time. And these shadows have a little bit too hard of an edge, so I'll smooth them out with the water blender. And then to finish the stem, I'll just use the arrow tool to kind of shrink it down and then move it into position. I'll try to line it up with that crescent shape, and if it ends up going too far, I can always cut it back with the eraser. And usually I won't really put it right in the center of that crescent. I'll kind of put it off to one side. And then I'll use the water blender just a little bit on the base of it. And at this point, the pear is kind of almost finished, but there's another optional step here. I want to show you how to add in a couple more interesting colors. Now for my workflow, I think it's easier to paint kind of a simple pear like this and then kind of add the colors at the end. So that's what I'll show you how to do now. So for that, I'll make sure the pear layer is selected. Then I'll tap on it to bring up the menu, and I'll turn on Alpha Lock. Now I need a brush that's very fluffy and soft, so I'm going to use the Blooming Wash Brush. For the color, I'm going to stick to pretty saturated colors, and I'm just going to play around with this. So for example, I might try a kind of greenish tone like this, and I'll very lightly, like I'm just barely resting the pencil on the screen, and I'm very, very lightly washing on this green tone. Now the reason Alpha Lock is on is because it prevents us from painting out here. We can only recolor the pear like this. So I'm going to go in there and just drop in maybe some greens, some oranges, and maybe some magentas or reds in there. And I'll do my best to keep these out of the highlights because I think those look nice if they stay pretty pure and white. And there we go. I think these colors look a lot more interesting. So once the pear is finished like this, it could be done and you could export it as it is, but I want to show you how I draw these cute faces. So for that, I'll make a blank layer, but I'm going to drag it above everything, even above the paper texture. And I'll start by drawing the eyes with the fine liner pen, and I'm just going to draw some pure white ovals. And then for the irises, I'm going to use the selection tool set to freehand, and I'm just going to select basically 1/2 of each oval. Then I can just go to hue, saturation, and brightness, and lower the brightness until they turn black. And then for the rest of the details, I can just draw them on using the fine liner pen and the colored pencil brush. And lastly, once all the details are painted on, I can use the freehand selection tool and the arrow tool just to move around the different elements and sort of refine the expression. And then I almost forgot, but you can add some leaves if you want. So I'm going to add 2 different types of leaves. One is just a stroke-based leaf using the medium quill. And then the other is just kind of an eclectic thing I sketched out with the colored pencil brush. And just like that, this cute little pear is finished. And obviously, you don't have to add a face onto it like I did. But the reason I did it is because it sort of allows you an easy way of adding a story to an otherwise simple illustration. As always, if you think I've earned it, please give this video a like. If you made it to the end, let me know in a comment below. And here are 2 more watercolor tutorials I think you'll love to watch next.